Before we get started, I'd love to give a shout out to all of my subscribers. I really appreciate you. If you watched a few times and have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? It doesn't hurt to touch that subscribe button. Go for it. Hello, kindred spirits, and happy 2021. Now, I'm not expecting everything in the world to change just because of something that happened at midnight on December 31st into January 1st, but when it comes to the new year, I do look forward to freshening up the house and just starting new. And one of those new things that I want to do this year, especially for this channel, is answer a question or respond to a comment that was made that I feel will help others. So I did get a question from McCrod781 in one of my last videos, and it does say, "Hi Linda, I love your channel so much, and I was wondering if you could give some tips on how to decorate the home after the Christmas decor comes down." Then she has January decor, ? And I thought that is a great question because a lot of us do take our Christmas decor down, which I still have some up, and the house looks a little bare, but it's a great feeling, right? But sometimes maybe some of us just want to do a little something extra special. I know I do. So I thought in this video and in this podcast that you might be also listening to, that I'm going to share what I do. Now, I always start by freshening up and cleaning up the kitchen because there's been a few months of baking starting with Halloween right up through Christmas. So I give my kitchen a really great cleaning and I move some things around. Now, I still have to clean out my oven this week or next, but I like to move things around and freshen things up. So in my kitchen, I bring back a lot of my greens, my whites, my blacks, and my silver items just to give a nice crisp look. But the green gives me just a pop of happiness, for lack of better words. And then in January, I also plant my paperwhites. And I almost had a panic attack actually the other day because usually when I go to buy paperwhites at the end of the year, there's plenty of them. And this year I went to my local nursery and she said they sold out as soon as they hit the floor. So I panicked a little bit, got a little sad. But then I drove with my husband to another location, another landscaping company, and tucked aside in a back corner, I found a box of paperwhites. I was so happy. Talk about a simple pleasure. Just finding that box of paperwhites made my day. I'm easy to please in so many ways. And I grabbed 9 paperwhites, and I thought I would share what I'm doing this year with them a little different. And I was inspired by Linda Vader. She has a YouTube channel. I love watching her. If you haven't seen Linda's channel, head on over and take a watch. I'll link it below. But I was happy to buy the paperwhites, and I'm going to show you what I did last year, just a quick overview, because we did talk about them last year where I used gin to stunt their growth, and it was a success. I had one container of paperwhites that were smaller and shorter than the others. But once I cleaned out the containers, you could see why. The roots were actually just really damaged and gnarly and dark. So this year, I'm going to let my paperwhites go alcohol free. Just like right now, myself. I'm a week without having alcohol because we're trying to lose weight here. And I know having my wine or my martinis isn't helping that goal. So my paperwhites and myself are gonna enjoy a lot of water right now. So let me show you what I do and let me tell you what I do with the paperwhites this year. Now I've used sticks before, but not actual twigs, and I started to realize that I like to decorate for winter, but I don't like having just the empty pot with stones. So in my courtyard, I do have a table set up that I've been collecting sticks and limbs from our willow birch that it keeps dropping, and with our past couple storms it's really dropped a lot. So I have one pile set up that I'm using the sticks for the wattle fence, and I have two other piles that I was going to make a wreath with, a twig wreath. I'm going to give it a try. And then I have another smaller pile that will be used for the fireplace and just some fire starters. So I decided to bring some of those inside. I brought in a large urn from the garden. I took off pine cones from the Christmas wreath that I made in December, the cinnamon pine cones. They still smell amazing, even though they've been outside. I have my twigs, and I also grabbed a bowl. I'm going to put that inside of the urn, and then I have my stones. So, like I said, I'm just going to put the bowl inside the urn, one to hold water, and two just to lift it up a bit so I'm not using as many stones. The Yankee that I am, I actually washed the stones I had last year and saved them, so I'm pouring those into the bowl right now, and I have the off-white just because I liked the look. And I was a little concerned that I had too much of the bowl showing, but once I got started, I could see it's not going to be an issue, especially since I'm going to be adding some of the pine cones. Now, while I'm planting these, I'm going to read the instructions that came with them just so that I'm giving you the correct information versus just what I do myself. So it says here, to force the paper whites, plant bulbs in a pot with soil or pebbles. Plant so the upper half of the bulb are visible. If soil is used, keep moist but do not overwater them. If pebbles are used, keep water level just below the base of the bulbs, never touching them. Place the pot in a full light and they will bloom within 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the time of year. In early fall, it will take 6 weeks. In late fall, 4 weeks. After flowering, remove the dead flowers and stems. Plant the bulbs with the leaves still on, 6 inches deep in the garden, and they will bloom again the following spring. I have tried to plant them in the spring and they didn't return, but I'm going to give it another go. So now that my bulbs are planted on top of the stones, I could have watered them, but since I'm adding these twigs, I'm going to do that after I move it to its final location. So what I did is I found the longest twig that I had and I started in the middle, and then you'll see that I'm just going to be going around in a circle. And once again, this is to hold up the very long stems once they grow, but also in the meantime, when I have nothing in this pot, it's a winter decoration that I'm going to have in my kitchen, and I know me, I'll probably add it and move it probably to 3 other locations in the house before they bloom, but that's a whole other story. Now for the pine cones. My plan was to go around the whole edge, but a lot of them were too big, so I'm going to use the smaller ones, and I had smaller pine cones in the attic that I could have went and got, but no, just too lazy. So I'm going to use a few. I'm using the branches kind of to hold them in. And once again, it's just decorative. And the scent of the cinnamon that it's still giving off is really nice here in the kitchen. And I liked the extra texture that it gave. Once I was done with the pine cones, I went back in and added even more twigs, and I went around the outside of the bowl as well, so I have some sticking in the stones and I have some in between the crack of the bowl and the urn, once again just to fill it up, just to make it decorative. I really like how these came out, and now all I have to do is add water, wait for them to grow, and I'll keep adding water just up to the bottom of the bulbs. In a moment, I'm going to share with you my white hyacinths and what I did with them when I brought them home from market, and a little bit of information that I learned that I'd like to share with you about what to do with them when you bring them home. Now, moving forward with the white hyacinths, did I mention already in this video that I love to use white flowers in my winter decorating versus colorful ones? And that is just a preference. There's no reason for it whatsoever. I don't even know when I started doing that, but right after Christmas, I'm usually buying white hyacinths, white tulips. I have my paper whites going, and once again, there's no rhyme or reason for it. But after January, I do start adding my color. Now, one thing with hyacinths is you do not cut the stem when you bring them home from the market or from the florist. You leave them just like that, but you do want to give them a nice fresh rinsing before you put them into your vessel. Now, I'm reading a little information from floristmart.com, and it does say that when you buy hyacinths and you don't need them right away, you can just lay them in a dry, cool space, and they won't open until you put them in the water. Now, my hyacinths, when I bought them, were already in water, and I do not remember if I purchased them when I used to go to the flower market. I don't remember if they used to be set out in water or dry. I'm going to have to ask my florist friend that question. But I did want mine in water, so I used my very clean vessel and I put them in water that I added also some of the floral nutrient that came along with them. And yes, I'm using my martini pitcher and its stirrer. I figured if I'm not going to be drinking for a while, I might as well use it while I'm working on plants. For this arrangement today, there are no other flowers being added in, so I just have a clear vessel here that I'm going to be putting them in. I put the tallest in the center. I'm just putting other flowers around it. I'm going to let them open and flop loosely and just have it nice and casual. And to complement the arrangement that I did on the other side of the kitchen with the whites, greens, silver, and glass, I have the same exact thing on this side of the kitchen. Another thing I like to do for winter decorating are the urns out in front of the house. Now, this Christmas I had apples and greenery and pineapples on the urns, so I took all of that away, and remember the sticks that I used for the previous floral arrangement? I used them again. I simply put a bunch in each urn. I put up our Grand Union American flag and left it at that. I don't even have a wreath on right now. My hopes are to make the wreath out of the rest of the twigs. But if I do, I'm either going to have to do that in the kitchen, the dining room table, or finish a project in the basement that I have to clean up an area, paint, set up a table. So I think right now I'm going to leave the door empty. Now, over the years, I've been asked many times how I store my holiday decor, especially my Christmas. And for the most part, I have done it by color. I've done this for my clients as well, since every year I would change the look or the style. But this year I'm deciding to put it together by the tree because I really liked how all the trees came out this year, and I might do the same next year. Who knows, I might not. But for the kitchen tree here, I ended up putting a little bit of rice in a container. And when I say a little bit, pretty much the whole boil in a bag thing. My hopes are to keep any moisture out, and I probably only needed a little bit of rice, but I figured if it works for drying out a cell phone, it should work for the fruit. Now, the dried fruit was pretty dry, but I just didn't want to take any chances. Last year, some critters got to it, and I figured I'm going to put it in this container, but then later you'll see I ended up putting it in a Ziploc bag because I needed this for something else. But I think this is going to work. And the fairy would normally go into the fairy box, but they're all going to stay together with the kitchen Christmas tree. And just looking at this again, I just love this look with the cinnamon ornaments and the faux fruits and the dried fruits. I'm already looking forward to putting this up next year. Is that weird? And here's the fruit I ended up putting in the bag. I needed the container for these cookies. They're a little more fragile. Now that everything's together, it goes into the box that's going to say kitchen tree and go up into the attic. I'd like to take this one last moment to explain about the podcast that I've recently started and to put a couple of you at ease. I've received some direct messages, first of congratulations, but a few of you are a little worried that I'm going to stop the YouTube channel, and I want to let you know that is furthest from the truth. If anything, it's just going to be added to. For instance, part of this video will be in an episode on my new podcast station. And then sometimes I might do something on the podcast that I will then put on YouTube, but put some movies to it or still photos, and those will be things like poems or stories that I'm reading. But once again, I want to assure you that this YouTube channel is remaining and I have a lot more to share with you. But for now, I'd like to give a huge first of the year hug to my subscribers. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't still be doing this. Bye now.